It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, September the 27th. Time to open the regular school district meeting for the Wenatchee School District. I'll ask everyone to please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I welcome everyone to this board meeting and thank you for joining us, whether it be in person or if you use the recording of the meeting later to keep yourself informed or online. We're grateful for your civic interest and effort. Ofrezco una bienvenida a esta reunión de la mesa directiva del Distrito Escolar. Gracias por su asistencia, si sea en persona, online o usando el video más tarde para mantenerse informado. Agradecemos su esfuerzo cívico. This meeting is conducted in English, but we do have translation services if requested, so that citizen comment may be spoken in Spanish and be repeated in English. Si alguien quiere hacer su comentario de ciudadano o recibir explicaciones en español, por favor indique su necesidad. Tenemos disponible un servicio de traducción. At this point, are there any requests from the board to modify the consent agenda? That being the case, the consent agenda contains the minutes from the 9/13 regular meeting and from the 9/19 board workshop, vouchers and payroll, the personnel report, contracts, and field trips. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you very much, Julie. Yes, the mics are a little more powerful than normal, aren't they? Thank you, Ron and Liz.
I'll second.
Thanks, second, Catherine. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? That being the case, I'll ask for a vote with everybody signifying aye if they are in favor.
Aye.
We have all ayes, and so the consent agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments, which is the time for the board to welcome and listen to public comment before we do any action items. Comments do need to be scheduled beforehand. We have a 3-minute time limit, and I will warn speakers when their time is about to expire, as it isn't easy to watch the clock. And then Kim, do you have anybody who's signed in? And Ron, you have nobody online either, okay? Right. The next item are 2 presentations. One, I really welcome the school resource officers and appreciate you, and Tom, and I'm turning it over to Bill to introduce you.
Thank you. As Corey and Natalie get ready for their presentation here, I just want to say a thank you to our school resource officers. I have had the opportunity to see them at buildings with students, off campus with students at athletic events, in the evenings in buildings with students, supporting things like opening lockers on the parent evening, and just their constant interaction with kids, not just in the building, but at activities outside the building and at parent events has been wonderful to see. So thank you. We're glad you're here tonight and looking forward to hearing from you.
Gotta be green.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay.
So we just want to take the opportunity tonight really just to introduce ourselves and kind of give you a little insight to what we do, what we're about, what we're looking forward to this new upcoming school year. I'm Natalie Steele. I've been with Wenatchee Police Department. It'll be 5 years in October. And I became an SRO, a school resource officer, in February of this year.
Hi, I'm Corey Fuller. I've been with Wenatchee for about 4.5 years now. I have almost 12 years total in law enforcement, and I started last October as an SRO.
So we just want to talk about a little bit about our position and kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis. In our responsibilities, it can be a common misconception that, you know, school resource officers have this law enforcement only aspect in school. But it's really a lot of informal counseling and mentoring, and obviously building those positive relationships. And really, I mean, we're a school resource officer, which means that we're a resource for students, staff, parents, the community. So it's not just this body of students. I mean, we get reports from parents and reports from students of things that don't happen at school necessarily. So it's not just we're confined by the walls of the school. We do a lot of, just to give you a little insight, we do, you know, welfare checks when parents or staff or teachers, counselors, anything like that are concerned about the welfare of a child, their attendance, stuff like that. We'll go to the house. I know that we've even offered rides to give kids rides to school if they miss the bus, or transportation is an issue. We do a lot of informal counseling with students, you know, talking about friendships and relationships and, you know, parents and social media, stuff like that. Obviously lunches and recess, one of our favorites. Parking, traffic complaints, everything like that in and around the schools, you know, at the schools. And and patrol helps us a lot with that in the morning, especially in that high school area and Pioneer Middle School where there's a lot of school traffic. They really help to keep those kids safe and make sure that everyone's abiding by those school zone speed limits. We provide resources for parents. We do a lot of talk on like at-risk youth and SAGE for counseling, family counseling, Catholic Family Charities. So we are kind of the hub of a lot of that information that parents don't know about. So we are able to provide that for them. And then we handle any criminal or non-criminal complaints that are made at the school. So theft, harassment, bullying, sex offenses, they get reported to school counselors. Those then get reported to us. Any sort of CPS concerns where someone's not sure about how to, you know, make a CPS referral, assaults, graffiti. I mean, there's really a whole large scope of our job, and it's not just the criminal side of things. A lot of it is that informal counseling, and a lot of it is, you know, parents and staff. I mean, I know even today it was, you know, they didn't know how to really decipher a parenting plan. They're like, I don't know if, you know, the kid can get released to this dad. So a lot of these little things that people don't think about. And we're really working hard to change that perception of SROs, because we recognize that we're law enforcement and we look like this and dress like this, and so does patrol. So one of the things that we are really focusing on is building those positive relationships with kids. And there is a definition in the law of a school resource officer, and that is one of the primary functions. It literally defines school resource officer as a commissioned law enforcement officer, you know, with full capabilities of making arrests, but who focus on building those positive relationships with students. And part of that definition is keeping kids out of the justice system when possible. And I mean, Corey will go over that, but I think that we do a really great job of, you know, not putting kids in juvie when they don't need to be in juvie. There's a lot of other resources for them. With that being said, we'd love to extend the invitation to any of you. I know that I've seen Bill around there, but we would love, if there's a time when you want to stop by, lunches, recess, anytime really, and see us with the kids. I mean, it would be really great to just kind of have you guys get the lay of the land, what our daily, you know, routine looks like. You'll be approached and asked for stickers like 1,000,001 times, so we'll hand you some. Yeah, hundreds of stickers. That's one of the, I should put that in there under daily duties. Yeah, so we've sent that invitation to you. We'd be happy to have you anytime you would like to stop by. So this year we're doing something a little bit new. We're obviously responsible for all of the 15 schools in the district. And this year we're doing assigned schools. So we're trying to divvy up the workload. And we thought that it would really, going back to that positive relationship, it's hard when there wasn't the same school resource officer there. You know, they see Corey one day and then they see me one day, and then they switch schools, and then, you know, they really never know who they're getting. And with us both being relatively new to this position, well, before this, it was Jared and Jared. So it's, you know, these kids really haven't had, and then it was COVID. So we thought that it would be good to have them have the same school resource officer in that school. Granted, we can still go to any of the schools. We would love to make it around all the schools. But primarily in that school, they know that they have an assigned school resource officer. We're the person that they see the most in that particular school. And that way, you know, when they come in at 6th grade in middle school, we can follow them all the way through until 8th grade. And they will have seen Corey, you know, a few times here and there, lunches, stuff like that. So they know him. And I'm talking my assigned middle schools if it were mine. But that way they know Corey and they understand having a school resource officer and stuff like that, but that I have been with them for these 3 years and now, you know, sending them off to a different school. So we've kind of developed this way of schools, and I really think it works better too for the administration, because then they have, you know, a main point of contact. It's not, do I text Corey or text Natalie? I don't know. And it's kind of hard because you know, I'm Monday through Thursday and he's Tuesday through Friday, and I don't expect all of them to remember our schedules. So we've developed this format where it's you text your assigned or call or email your assigned school resource officer. If they don't get back to you within that amount of time, they'll reach out to the next one. If they still need an officer contact right then they'll call Rivercom. And that way that workload is spread apart, and we're getting the time with the kids that we really want. So it's worked out so far. This year we revamped the office at I didn't partake in that, but gracious people put in a lot of work to revamp the office at Wenatchee High School. So it's a bigger space, it's more visible. Corey's there right in the front, doors open if he's there, kids walk by. I mean, the other one was tied into the security office, so the window was blocked and the door was shut because security is watching, you know, the cameras and stuff like that, so it couldn't just be open all the time. So this way the kids are seeing him, and I think it's worked out really well. And then I have offices at Pioneer and Orchard Middle School, and yeah, those have been great. We developed because beforehand we didn't have a way to do our reports or a laptop or anything like that. So this year we have our tablets, we have it's a full office for us. So that way, beforehand it was really, you know, we're going to a lunch here and there, but then we have to go back and we have to type this report, and we need our system because we have, you know, the police system and we can't see our calls. We couldn't see anything on the board. So it was a lot of back and forth, and it felt like a lot of time wasted in between that. So it's been really nice to be able to have kind of a home for us. It feels like we're being a lot more productive and getting a lot more time with the kids. We're out during passing periods, things like that. And then last year we did various presentations. We did the parent nights, the community event. This year on Saturday was at the high school for the parent day there. And so that's one thing that we're just going to continue throughout this year. Any sort of parent event, like Bill said, the welcome back, those kind of events are stuff that we want to be present at.
Okay, so I'm gonna briefly go over some stats that we compiled from last year and some of our recent trainings that we did. So our records department so these are rough estimates. Last year we handled 294 calls at the schools. So that's with a school address put into dispatch. So with that being said, I mean, there's thefts, welfare checks, other miscellaneous calls, like if it was reported at their house, but we handled it at school, that's not taken into account. It's 294. So I don't even know a rough estimate, but it's over 300 calls easily that we've handled. So out of these calls that we've handled, we've only made 5 physical arrests on students last year out of all of our contacts. And those are for a kid at Pioneer selling drugs, assault at Wenatchee High School, a warrant at Pioneer, kid threatening to kill other students at Orchard, and another assault at Wenatchee High School. And those assaults that we made the arrest on, those were attacks. They weren't mutual combat fighting, so it was a serious offense. So yeah, our goal with all those contacts, our goal is not to make arrests on juveniles. And we want to do everything possible to keep them out of jail and give them the resources they need. We both meet with the admin, usually on every case, and kind of get their input and ask them, hey, do you think we should make a physical arrest, refer charges, do school discipline? So they help us out a lot in our decision. Trainings that we've done last year and into this year, we completed 13 hours of mandatory state online training, which was for House Bill 1214. That was per the law in that new House bill, it has to be completed within your first 6 months of being an SRO. So we both completed that. We attended a 40-hour basic SRO class. And then this summer we got to go to Denver for the National SRO Conference, which was an awesome conference. Some of the topics they talked about were gangs, data collection, school law updates at the federal level. And we had multiple speakers on school safeties and school shootings. 3 speakers during that conference that really stood out to us. We had Frank DeAngelis, who was a principal at Columbine during the school shooting. He talked. And then we had a parent of her 6-year-old daughter got killed in Sandy Hook. She talked, and then one of the first responding officers of Sandy Hook talked. So it was, I mean, those are really sad, but good information, good training. Some training that we hope to get to here in the future. We want to attend advanced SRO training, which I believe is 3 days. I think so. Child forensic interviewing, and we want to continue, hopefully going to the national conference and get new topics and stuff we can bring back to the schools. Another thing we did last year, we started this towards the end of the year. We met with SROs from Chelan County, Douglas County, and then Eastmont. And we kind of talked about what's going on in each school district, gang activity, all that type of stuff. We only met once, and then it got into graduation summertime. So we'll get that started again soon. And then also Eastmont, we helped at the Eastmont football game 2 weeks ago now. And they've agreed to help us with sporting events. So we've got a good working relationship with them, helping each other out. And yeah, so we're excited for the school year, and hopefully we can get the SRO program continuing and going in the right direction. You guys got any questions?
I definitely think board members would like to engage in a conversation with you, right?
Yes. Go ahead, Julie.
So one of my questions is, the biggest issue we hear from parents, I think, is there's crimes going on in our school. Why are there no arrests? Can you speak a little bit more to your distinction between, when you draw the line between this is a criminal offense that we're going to, go through the juvie and that process versus how you work with the administration through the disciplinary process?
Yeah, so on a lot of these cases, if it's criminal, let's take an assault, we'll still generate a case through Rivercom. And then we'll do a report. And if we're not we'll meet with the admin. If we're not going to make a physical arrest, like go book them in a juvenile, we still do a report, and it gets sent to juvenile prosecutor, and he reviews it. And if he says, yes, there's enough probable cause, he'll issue charges. And a lot of times they do, if it's their first offense, if it's misdemeanor, I don't know if for felonies they do diversion or not, but I know misdemeanors, they'll get what's called diversion. Usually it's like a suspended sentence. So if they
Basically, they're on like probation for that bit. So they have conditions. If they abide by those conditions, then this charge kind of goes away. It's a way of there's no jail time after that. So it's kind of a diversion program.
But if they mess up while they're on that, then those original charges plus any new charges they'll get charged with. And so
it's a case by case basis. It depends on the severity of the offense, as most of those listed. I mean, like those are felonies or serious, like cause bodily injury and stuff like that. And it also, which is why we're in communication with the administration, because they spend more time with these kids. I mean, they know these kids better. They may have had them for longer than we've known them. So we like to get their input on, kind of where they're at. Is this their first time? Is this their first, disciplinary action that has been taken in school? Let's say it's their first fight. there's text between two students who agree to, come to the bathroom and fight. It's a mutual combat type of fight. Can that be solved more on the school discipline side of things and spare them a night in juvie, and charges still get forwarded? Or is it something where juvenile needs to happen tonight? People aren't safe. They clearly are like not remorseful, stuff like that. So we call it the totality of the circumstances. We take in the totality of the circumstances and kind of determine what best action is for that student and, for the suspect and the victim. And it really is, it's a case by case basis kind of a thing. So I wish I could give you, a dead set formula that we go off of. But there's a lot that goes into it. Is this student, are they a special ed student? Do they have like a behavioral thing that didn't get followed at school? So then they escalated and this thing happened. There's a lot that goes into that decision of whether or not to book. The other thing is typically with misdemeanor, if it were an assault, they go into juvenile. If it's not a Friday, they'll see a judge the next day. I'm not the judge, so I can't speak to always. But what we typically see is that they're released the next day. And so then the process is the same after that as it would be if we were to forward charges. So it's really a night in juvie. Is that going to be like impactful? Is that necessary versus you still get the same outcome after that? And if we feel like that night in juvie is necessary for the severity of the crime, then absolutely they're going. But I think what a lot of people don't see is that they're still getting charged. So it's not like nothing is being done. They still are getting charged, but that first charge goes to this diversion program in an effort to keep kids out of the justice system. So it's kind of already integrated into our juvenile program of keeping the kids out of the justice system. So it's not that nothing is being done a lot of the times, which I think we have done a really good job of explaining that to both parents typically, both the suspect and the victim. Here's what's going to happen. And we ask the parents as well. I mean, we take the administration's opinions into consideration, the parents' opinions into consideration. And we look at the totality of the circumstances and say, okay, a night in juvie, this kid's clearly remorseful. Nobody was seriously injured. This isn't like a felonious, really serious offense. It's their first time they've ever been in trouble at school. Maybe this kid goes home, does the suspension at school, still gets the charges forwarded, so they're still going to have consequences, but that night in juvie was not necessary. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you. That's actually very helpful, especially knowing that it's still being processed. So there's another sort of set of eyes and whatnot on it.
Yep.
And in case something happens, I guess again. So
yeah, and all of that is, we make sure to keep we still generate the case numbers. Even when we're not referring charges, we'll generate the case numbers so that it's still in that system, in our system of, you can see the previous contacts. So that way, if something pops up, oh, well, 2 weeks ago, this kid had this other thing that maybe didn't amount to something criminal, but it was semi-related to this. And that way we can kind of track that. But yeah, once we do that report and we forwarded charges, it hits the juvenile prosecuting attorney's desk. And then he then begins his process of things.
First of all, welcome to the Wenatchee School Board, School District, excuse me, and to our meeting tonight. I've not seen either one of you or any SROs in our district since the two Jareds disappeared. So it's nice to see your faces. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course.
I do have some questions and just overall philosophical, I guess, concerns about SROs in our district. And please know that I have always supported contracts that employ you. So it's not that I'm opposed to it, but I do think that there's a balance, there's a fine line to walk by folks in your position. And one of the things that I want us to keep an eye on is, and you maybe already have an answer to that, is making sure that our law enforcement folks don't take over the role of staff discipline, because then students begin to view law enforcement and conflate education with law enforcement. And that's something that we really don't want. I'm sure you've seen the videos where students are developing negative impressions of law enforcement in schools, when what we really want is positive. And so along that line, I do have one question for you each. What is your favorite relationship building activity that you've done with the students to date or that you plan to do in the future?
I think just like Natalie touched on how we go to recesses. That's the best time we can interact with all the kids during lunch and while they're eating, but mostly a lot of time last year we spent going out and playing basketball. We'd play one-on-one, or me and Natalie would take 2 or 3 kids on. So that's always fun playing.
Very good.
We always won though. Not well.
Thanks to you.
But then just finding the kid standing there by himself, throwing a football in there by himself, going to play catch with him, or playing Foursquare and losing to the kids because they're really good at that.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, I think that's the best part. The interaction is getting to see them outside of the classroom, outside of school a little bit, and kind of see how they interact with them.
Good.
Yeah, I would say that's my favorite time. I absolutely love going out there and playing the sports, and it's different than passing them briefly in the hallway. You kind of get more time and you get to pass out the stickers, and they're really excited. And they want to see us play basketball. They want to see me embarrass myself, which I'm totally fine doing. And that kind of stuff is really fun. And to address your first point, we are not allowed to enforce any school discipline. That is not part of our role. We are specifically, law enforcement for the enforcement part of things. And then that informal counseling, like I talked about earlier, where it's, that students not in trouble for anything and they want to come talk about, friends and family and stuff like that. We're very much kept separated. I would say the majority of the time, when we are getting called, like I just called today, the students are home, they're suspended. And then I get called and I come in and I hear what happened. So it's not like this, we don't have really group meetings where a fight occurs, they call us, and then it's me, the principal, and that student talking right then and there, right after that happened. We also have laws in Washington State where if we have probable cause to arrest a juvenile and they're being detained for that probable cause, which a kid in a principal's office, they're going to feel like they're not free to leave. And it's different when it's the principal because they don't have the authority. But when we come in, they're obviously being detained under school stuff. Well, then if they're going to feel like they're being detained for our stuff. And if there's probable cause to arrest them, so after a fight, we have to call a juvenile attorney for them. I've called, I don't know how many times you've called, I don't know how many times. I've never had an attorney tell me that I can talk with the kid. And it doesn't matter if the kid wants to talk, the parents want them to talk. The attorney has the right to invoke their rights for them. And so I can't speak with that student at all. So, and it's it would be cheating if the principal is having a conversation with the kid and I'm not asking any questions, but I'm sitting there and listening to all the questions that the principal is asking that juvenile while I'm in the room. That's
one of those fine lines I was thinking about, like, why would you don't have to answer this question, but in my mind, I'm thinking, why would you even be called into a situation like that unless there was a potential crime? But I want to go away from that for 1 second, because I'm curious about the trainings that you mentioned were mostly focused on school safety, which is super important. We don't want a school shooting to happen here. And thank you for being on the front line of that, because that is above all super important. But back to the relationship thing, what kind of training do you all receive in regards to interacting with students who are differently abled?
So that was he didn't specify the 13 hours, but that's part of that required training by the House bill. So we learned like trauma-informed response, any sort of like developmentally or physically disabled. We had bias training. There was stuff about like homeless, dealing with homeless students or students that may not have all the resources that they need. That 13 hours was a lot of that kind of training. The the like adolescent brain, here's how, here's what the kids are like developed at this age and this age and this age, and here's how this could impact, if you were to do something at this age, here's how that could impact this. And there's stuff in there about, like I said, we absolutely don't handle anything with school discipline. That there was a large section on that. And then I specifically remember there was training on, differentiating between something criminal, if a kid is, throwing things and breaking things. But is that criminal, or are they responding to an emotion? And does this kid have some sort of behavior plan? What is that plan? If they're in an empty room by themselves, they're not posing a threat to anyone. Or is the kid stimming? Is their stimming action something that we need to prevent, or is this okay for now? We had a lot of that in there of, kind of learning about how to differentiate between taking action at that moment. And I mean, in something like that, I doubt we would even be called, but and aside from the school stuff, we are already trained in crisis intervention training, and we're mandated to maintain that training every year.
Okay. Well, I would just encourage you to dive a little deeper into the special ed realm and, behaviors that kids do, especially those with autism or Asperger's. And
yeah, I have previous just knowledge of that because my mom is a social worker who works with kids on the autism spectrum. So, and we had crisis intervention training that was specifically dedicated to that. And I think we're both absolutely open to learning more about that. And I can't say that I've had a situation where I've even been involved, I don't think.
Okay.
Or called because they can't figure it out and they need the police to do something.
okay, I have just one more question, then I'm gonna yield the floor. So you talked about 294 calls and 5 arrests, which I'm happy about that ratio. But I'm curious if you have a breakdown on the other 199 or whatever it is, 200 and whatever
As far
calls.
as like what kind of calls they were and all that?
What were they? If they weren't, were they criminal things? Were they just, I saw some guy walking where he shouldn't be going, or?
It's
Everything.
All of
Any
that.
call that Rivercom received that had a school address, so someone trespassing, someone suspicious on the property,
they had their
staff
tablet.
welfare checks like at school. So it's,
Be
we
interesting.
have it broken down. It would just take a lot longer than we have to explain it and show you guys, but we'd be happy to get that at some point.
That's totally fine. And I'd love to see that, but I'm really more interested in the balance between building relationship and positive community as opposed to law enforcement.
I think it's a little hard with the calls because we don't generate calls for what you're talking about.
Right.
Like, because we have our system and our system is our like law enforcement system. So we don't generate a call saying that we did parent night. We don't generate a call,
True.
going like when we're out at lunch, we don't, all of that. So in terms of interactions, that's like a fraction of the interactions that we've had. But with our law enforcement system, we don't.
Right. And yet the bulk of our conversation tonight surrounded criminal activities. And what I'm trying to get to is let's weed away from that and let's get into the positive building of relationship with kids, helping them steer them in the right course or whatever. And I know you're already doing that, but how can we demonstrate that as a district and you as SROs that we are really truly doing that?
So and that was part of what we learned at the national conference in this data collection class. And so we have discussed, they basically discussed changing the perception. It was called changing the perception of SROs through positive data collection. And they were an agency in Colorado, and they logged every single basically every single contact that they have beyond just like a hi, hello, how are you? Any sort of informal counseling, any sort of recess, event, sporting event, all of that stuff. So it was a separate system from their criminal justice side of things, but that was still included. And we've talked about developing something like that. We would like to do that. And that way we can see how many contacts we've had. These were the, that resulted in criminal anything. And these were this, positive engagement type of stuff versus like just reaction to, a call that happened.
And those 294 calls, those aren't all just criminal either. I mean, some of them are kids come and report their Chromebook stolen, or a sex offense that occurred last summer. Admin asking us to go do a welfare check and bring a kid to school. So there's other things in that just besides all being criminal.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, I'm very, very thankful to have you both, and I'm appreciative of what you do every day. So thank you again also for coming and sharing that with us. We had the meeting last year about the gang situation and how what was happening in the city and in terms of Wenatchee School District. I'm wondering if you have an update on that for us. Anything new to tell us, or where you think we're at as far as that goes?
I would say it's pretty similar. Yeah. And the most active ages that we're seeing are school-aged kids. And so far I haven't had any sort of, it seems like they're taking it off of school grounds. I haven't had like a gang, we've had fights in the school, but what I would categorize as a gang related fight. I have yet to respond to one of those or be involved in something like that. Graffiti has been
Hardly any.
I think I've had, I think I've only had one that was gang related. And so in the schools. But I would say it's the same, and that where we are seeing the most active age are those juveniles. A lot of what's happening is on social media, which then goes back and forth, and then it presents itself in some sort of altercation, typically off of, outside of school grounds. But from what we talked about last year, I would say it's pretty similar. Obviously we did have the outside stuff that has been occurring with, the shootings that have happened. And again, that, drive-by shooting at on Mission. Those were, they were kids, like they were young. So that's the most active ages that we're seeing.
And I think admin at the schools are doing a good job so far with hammering down on the dress code and not allowing these kids to be wearing their colors and other gang related items. That's helping a lot so far.
And those behavior contracts of, once they're put on that, and then these other things fall into that category as well. I think they're doing a good job with that.
I have a question. So the district has done a really good job at addressing the language barriers. Do either of you guys speak Spanish? And if no, how do you build community around, what Laura was saying with our monolingual students or our families, our community? What approach are you taking to, bridge that gap?
Last year we did the PAC meeting and we had an interpreter. And when I was at the high school, I had an interpreter available if one was needed for the families. In terms of school, it's a lot of what I've noticed. It's difficult because I don't speak Spanish. It's hard. I know, a little bit of the basics. But a lot of what I've seen is like the body language. And so I think both of us do a pretty good job that we're not like marching down the hallway in this uniform. So that even if we, aren't speaking the exact same language, we're still communicating like in a positive way, smiling, saying hello, offering stickers, things like that. And we have numerous resources inside of the school, a lot of people who do speak Spanish. And so they they're really valuable asset to us when it comes time when we need to talk with a student who, Spanish is their primary language. That is helpful for us.
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacle with that too is communicating with the parents. Because most of the students that we kind of deal with can speak English. I mean, there's some that don't, but for the most part, it's the parents. So like Natalie said, having the translators available at the high school or whatever school to be able to make a phone call and put them on speaker is super helpful.
Just to follow up, you mentioned, with the trainings, maybe not specific to SRO training, but does the department provide cultural competency training for the demographics in our valley?
The department in particular, I don't think does. I mean, I think we had that in CIT.
Training, yeah.
Yeah. So in our crisis intervention training, it's not necessarily just crisis intervention. I think we had one on like stress management for us. And there's various trainings, and there was a cultural one, but again, that's not, there wasn't something like specific to the valley. In terms of that, it was more of like a general, cultural awareness and kind of broad for Washington State in general.
Just putting it on the radar, because I think it just goes with that tying, just speaking with a judge earlier this week, understanding the body language and well, in this culture, this is, they don't make eye contact, or just as an example. And I think that would help, that perception of scary police, when that's how they're viewed in their country so thank you for Eden.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for everything you do, and having listened to you, I don't actually have any questions, but I do want to sort of give nudges and directions that you've indicated you're working. The kind of awareness that you show, covering that huge range from ultimate safety and the criminal justice system as little as possible, through to morale and interacting positively with the students. I mean, it's not easy. They're just two of you. I really appreciate it. You're spread thin, but I like the way you describe how you approach it. And I want to thank you for that. I guess I'm going to have to ask for an invitation, but won't be in the next few weeks. I have enjoyed seeing you technically and professionally at the gang meeting with the core pack of our Hispanic parents. And I know there, and I don't go to recess, I perhaps should, but I've seen the exit from school, which might even be a happier time of day.
Yeah.
And there appears to be, you are definitely demonstrating that you're there to help the school and the students. That's the way I feel about it. I'm not seeing very much about it, but just work at it through the obstacles. And in a sense, this is unrelated, but by coincidence, I wanted to see what the classroom was like inside the Juvenile Justice Center. And I was there last Friday, and there weren't very many people inside. So, and the attitude was similarly preventive, positive, and if working with the administrators, the way you described that, thoughtfully doing things, projecting positive images. I'm giving you a speech for you, but I think what I'm trying to say is actually, it looks like that's a really genuine, worthwhile, and good effort. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate the work you do and our partnership with City of Wenatchee that allows us to have you guys in our buildings. Thank you for being here.
Yes, we are lucky for that partnership. The next item, over to you, Bill, again now, is math instructional identity.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce Sarah Hanchy, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development. As part of our strategic plan, we've been doing some work with math this year, and she's going to present some work around our math instructional identity initiative this year, which is highly related to our strategic plan.
You want me to start over? Thank you for having me tonight to present to you on our math instructional identity. Okay, so I thought we would start out with the typical math problem here. And perhaps only in Wenatchee do students walk around with pockets full of apples. All right, so I'd like to share a visual with you about how our math instructional identity came to be and really how it's shaping our work in the area of math. So I'm going to walk through each of these roadmap steps with you tonight, starting with brainstorming our problem of practice and what we did around that, and then building a team, how we learned and discovered common ground, visioning our math instructional identity, what we're doing to build the skills and knowledge of our staff in regard to math, and then growing our students. So in spring of 2021, our district and school leaders met and we brainstormed our challenges in the area of mathematics. We had numerous sessions and we analyzed our data and we asked ourselves a couple of key questions. And those questions were here. What should students experience while learning math in the Wenatchee School District? And what should teachers experience while teaching math here? We discussed our problems of practice, our structural barriers, and our student needs. And as a result of these sessions, a consensus really arose that we had a lot of issues and a lot of things we needed to work on in regard to math. We knew that from our data, and we decided that we needed to form a district team, a committee of sorts, to really dive deeper into what we could do to address those challenges. So that spring in 2021, we convened a Math Research PLC. This is a district level group, and it includes representatives from all of our different schools. You can see the list there. We've got an elementary group, a secondary group, and sometimes we meet together as a K-12 group. Our goal has been to learn and engage in really deep research around high quality math instructional practices. So here and on the first page of your math instructional identity booklet that you have, you'll see a list of these people, as well as our math leadership that have been a part of this effort. Now, the topics that our Math Research PLC has been focused on learning about and diving into research on are listed here, and they fall into basically these three big buckets: critical components of instruction, teaching practices, and student equity. From the start, we really felt that it was important to build a cohesive vision around math instruction. And it needed to be relevant across grade levels and across schools. We needed to have system continuity K-12. So to develop really shared understanding, we engaged in a lot of learning activities to discover and cultivate what I refer to, or what I've come to refer to as our common ground. We knew that if we could find common ground in regard to our beliefs, our students would be better supported. They would have consistent learning experiences, and they would benefit from having more aligned instructional practices as they move throughout our system in WSD. And so we really focused on what are the common beliefs that we have about strong math instruction, what are the desired teaching practices that we think we need to have, and what are desired student experiences? What would we want students to experience in our classrooms? And so this is what arose within that Math Research PLC as being common beliefs about elements of strong math instruction after lots of learning and research in the group. And then we also were able to identify these commonly desired teaching practices. I want to be really clear that these are not just practices that teachers like to do or have fun doing. These are the things that teachers said support their ability to actually teach the math content well and really engage students in learning the math. Finally, we answered the question of what we would want students to experience in every single math classroom. And these are those things. So all of this learning and research that the group did really laid the groundwork for development of our math instructional identity. There's no way to really move toward aligned instructional practices unless you lay out a clear vision. And we knew that we needed to have that. We knew that we needed to provide that for staff. And so that's how our math instructional identity was born. It really lays out what we believe are 12 really key high quality instructional practices that we want to see in every single classroom. The strategies that we've come up with are based on the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics, as well as Bob Marzano and John Hattie, who are really well-known researchers. So on this wall over here, you can't read all of the marker writing, but these are just some artifacts that I wanted to bring so that you could see our research team spent hours really diving deeply into discussion about each one of the strategies you see in this booklet. And those are artifacts showing some of their work. And from that, we really started with our common ground. And then we talked about, for each of those strategies and the remaining 7 that aren't up there, we talked about what would it look like if this practice were visible in the classroom. What would you see teachers doing? What would you not see teachers doing? What would you see students doing? And how could you see this strategy in practice? Or what might you hear if the strategy were in practice in the classroom? So we went through several revisions. This is kind of the initial work. And you can see all of the colors representing different people who added to those posters. And after all of those renditions, we came up with our final math instructional identity, which I provided for you. So I'd like to take a moment to just walk you through this. So we're going to pull it up here on the screen for our audience to see. Okay, so that's the cover. And then on the very first page, which we'll scroll down to, you can see the gratitude page. And I want to make really clear for you to realize that this was a collective collaborative effort. This could not have been accomplished without a team of really thoughtful educators weighing in and informing the work. And they have done an amazing job and they continue to meet to this day. So moving on to the next page, you can see how all of this work aligns with our strategic plan. It's really essential that we build the skills and knowledge of our staff because we want to give students the best opportunities. And that includes providing them with high quality learning experiences in every content area. But in this booklet, we're specifically referring to math. We also want to make sure that we're providing real world experiences and relevant math learning opportunities. So the cartoon I presented at the beginning, that might have been relevant for Wenatchee students. Was it really a high quality task? Probably not. So we also know it's super important that we build the skills and knowledge of our staff to provide high quality instruction to students because we need to get our students ready for algebra, which is a gateway. That's the gateway to graduation. That's the gateway to higher level math courses. And so it's important that we build a really strong foundation, starting in kindergarten and going all the way up. Moving to the next page, you can see just the list there of the 12 math instructional identity strategies. And again, these were chosen because they're grounded in research. There are a lot of other strategies we could have chosen, but these are the ones that are particularly helpful for supporting students in math. You'll see too, some of them can apply to other content areas. The next page then shares specific ways that each staff group can use the resource, from our beginning teachers to experienced to PLCs, coaches, and school leaders. We also see on this page an explanation of effect size. Effect size really measures how an educational practice affects student achievement, positively or negatively. So then after that, as you continue on, you can see an overview of the 12 strategies. If we just scroll down right there, you can see an overview of the 12 strategies just laid out side by side. So that's nice and easy to see the research that went into each of those and an overview. And then if we continue on into the document, you can see each strategy fleshed out in much greater detail. We also have there, you can see the examples and non-examples of what this would look like in the classroom. If teachers are practicing the strategy, using the strategy, and if students are using the strategy. You wouldn't go into a classroom and see all of these at one time, but if this strategy were in place, you would be able to see some of these things or hear some of these things happening. So this math instructional identity booklet is really intended to be used as a teacher resource. It's intended for professional learning and PLC dialogue around high quality instructional practices. So PLCs would be using this when they are lesson planning and teaming. And then individual teachers would be using it as well whenever they're planning their lessons. We also refer to this in our trainings that we're doing this year for math. So we'll continue to do that. And, you know, as I said, building the skills and knowledge of our staff is something we're committed to do with our strategic plan. So with that, I want to go back to our main presentation. And oops, we're just going to go back into presentation mode. I think we should be on slide 15. Okay. So in order to build the skills and knowledge of our staff, we really need to first build system-wide understanding of what effective math instruction looks like. And then we need to train our educators on how they can actually facilitate that in their classrooms. So knowing that this book has 12 strategies, knowing that our staff have a lot on their plates already, but also knowing that we really want to move the dial in terms of math learning, we worked really closely with our math research PLC. We've laid out a really ambitious vision with this booklet and with all of our work, but we needed to have a really well-vetted plan and a thoughtful process for professional learning. So our math research PLC identified 2 areas to focus on this year in terms of professional learning, and those are purposeful questioning and procedural fluency. The team also provided input around what would make that professional learning really high quality and really relevant. So here you can see on this set of posters, input from those teachers, and they went back to their staff and they also talked to their staff about what they thought would be helpful, and they brought that back to our team. And so you can see there are some things that they said would be really valuable for them to learn about in regard to procedural fluency. Well, why am I talking so much about procedural fluency? Well, it's because we are actually focusing on the purposeful questioning, which we rolled out on August 24th. And we're focusing on procedural fluency on our remaining professional learning days this year. So we're so excited that on October 14th and January 20th, we actually will have a world-known expert, Jennifer May Williams. She will be here. She is the author of the 2 books that you have. And her background really is math fact fluency, procedural fluency. She is taught at every single level, highly renowned, very smart, very knowledgeable about what fluency is and is not and how you teach it really robustly. So she's going to be here working with our staff October 14th and January 20th. Our staff also received these books in August, so they have a sneak peek if they choose to take a look before October. And we'll be diving really deeply into procedural fluency all year. I think you probably all know also that Dr. Andy Boyd from the ESD has been partnering with us on this effort, and he and I will be facilitating PLC learning labs with our staff this fall, and we'll be focused on procedural fluency and purposeful questioning specifically. So we're really looking forward to that. And learning labs are designed, just a quick explanation of what those are. They're designed to engage PLCs in deep lesson study. So we co-plan a lesson really well together, and then we follow that with teaching in 2 classrooms. We analyze how it went after each classroom practice, and then we revise the lesson and we discuss how to make it better the next time and what they can take into their practice. So we really want to bridge. We want to really build that bridge from coming to a training and actually applying it in your classroom. So that's what the learning labs are all about. We're really excited about that. Okay, so our math research PLC is continuing to meet this year numerous times, and these are their topics, and they are constantly providing input and feedback on how we can implement the professional learning at the school and at the PLC level and continue to move our math instructional identity work forward. So in the spring, we also will be engaging teachers in some learning walks. They'll be going to some classrooms to see some of these strategies in action in their peers' classrooms. So we have math research PLC teachers who are excited to model some of these. And we hear from teachers that visiting other classrooms is one of the best forms of professional learning they can get, because they realize when they see their peers teaching a certain strategy that it's doable and they see exactly how it can be done. So we're really excited about that opportunity too. Okay, so now we are going to just close with a short video. Repeat that. So our goal is for every student to be successful in school, and that includes helping every student to enjoy math and helping every student to become a confident math learner. And we know that we can do this through building our staff's knowledge and really aligning our instructional practices, K-12, to provide those high-quality learning experiences that we know based upon research actually work. So I want to just thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and to share about the math instructional identity. And I welcome any questions or comments that you have.
I have one, and this kind of fits in with the workshop that we did last Monday. As a new board member, maybe I don't understand, but I'm wondering where both the things that and I asked this on last Monday, what we learned on Monday in that workshop and this, where is this something that, this seems like a big push and something new? Does this happen every year? Is this something new to the whole district? Is this something that has been around for a little while, but we're fine tuning it? It's hard for me to understand how this is a big change, or if this is a big change. Is it a big change from what's happened in the last 10 years or 15 years, and how that, I mean, just to better understand where that fits in? Same with the PLCs. I know they've been around for a while, and then the structured literacy that we've talked about, just how those new things fit into our district, kind of in a timeline, so that I know how it's going to, how we're, when and how we'll see results. Does that make sense? That question? Kind of long, sorry.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, we can say we have been focused on teaching and learning all along, and that is completely true. However, this effort in terms of really working on aligning our math teaching practices is new. We have all of our teachers have been teaching math. We have really invested a lot of money into curricular resources, but in terms of having a system-wide K-12 shared knowledge around what we are all doing in our classrooms to move the needle forward, this is new work as of spring of 2021. So the PLCs, I'm sure Mike shared about that previously, but the PLCs have kind of been an ongoing work, and we have renewed emphasis.
How would you say that kind of fits in, Mike, there? I mean, are we new across the board with this wonderful new math thing and the PLCs, or how, you know, it kind of feels like a revamp? Are we starting over in all things?
The thing that's probably new, the research behind a lot of this work is not necessarily new. A lot of it's based on the work of John Hattie, which Sarah referenced, and we've talked about John Hattie before in some of our workshops. You may recall that. The part that is probably new is a more systemic approach around providing the levels of support and accountability to push change and make it a permanent part of the system, as opposed to doing potentially some one-off trainings and then trusting that it's happening out there within the system, and just sort of what we would call islands of potential excellence, and quite frankly, some islands maybe of some mediocrity, where this is where we're getting serious about high leverage strategies based around our big 6 outcomes that we are going to guarantee that these are occurring in our classrooms.
So question I have, or clarification, this is not a new math curriculum per se. This is a new method of teaching math, essentially.
It's not a curriculum. It is a set of instructional methods that we know based upon research really work well for teaching math and for engaging students in math. And we are, you know, we've had teachers using some of these strategies. I want to be really clear about that. You know, we have teachers using some of these, or maybe all of these to some extent, but we want to really bring up that level of integrity within which we're using these strategies. We want to see these strategies in every single math classroom because we know they work.
This is really awesome, and I'm excited about it. It's the equivalent, I think, of what we did with the science of reading. Has that been a couple years already ago? But it is exactly as she described. It's a different, it's coordinated. When I first started on the board years and years ago, it was completely common that every classroom teacher was teaching in their own silo, we called it after a while. You know, you're teaching in a silo, you don't collaborate, you don't meet with other teachers, even in your own grade level or necessarily even in your own building. You're going to do it your own way, damn it, and stay out of my business. It was, I mean, not to be rude, but that was where we came from. And so evolutionary processes have now led us to these places where I'm feeling very hopeful about both math and reading, that we've finally got it down, that we'll be coordinating throughout the district and getting on the same page. And when we're within that system, hopefully we'll be able to tweak things as we go along systemically and not have that isolation anymore. We've been struggling for years with scores in reading and math that have not met expectations despite best intentions on everybody's part. I know that staff have been working really hard. Nobody's slacking, nobody's sitting on their heels, just waiting for it to happen. But they in my view, needed this sort of system to operate within in order to be really successful. And the proof of that will be when we see scores
Absolutely.
for growth, particularly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Actually, I want to pitch in, even though I don't know too much about what I'm talking about, but I'm very much echoing what Laura said. I have been anxious all the time I've been on the school board to see a similar initiative in mathematics. And no, it isn't a new textbook or a new curriculum. It's knowledge that's been around for a very long time. And we have, this district has been part of a national weakness. It's not local. I was delighted to be at the kickoff day down at the Performing Arts Center. And I'm going to use this as one illustration of something that I think is transformative. That you had to bring in a whole bunch more chairs, maybe like 100 chairs to go to the math session. Well, there were two things that I think a mathematician would have talked about, and one would have been being fearful or phobia, or simply saying, I couldn't do it. You don't have to worry if you don't have to do it. That's the illness, one of the illnesses that's being attacked. The other one is to focus on concepts, why this works, what the linkages are. A phrase that I sometimes use is you need how to do a solution, not just give somebody an answer that they don't understand. And if you do that, then people are able to remember and have memory and learn in the future. And they're also going to be able to solve problems. So it's that kind of approach. And you rightly said it's systemic. It's everybody getting together, aligned, using knowledge. And what I want to say now is it's going to be really, really hard work, and it is hard work. I am told that we need to be very careful not to overload people, because they're, by people, I mean teachers and classrooms. The other aspect I would talk about mathematics is we have 13 if you count kinder grades, and you could sit in on a 9th grade math class last year and know that what we're doing now is not going to have a huge impact. It works its right way through the system. So it's a multi-year program, a very merit-worthy one. The analogy to functional literacy is apt. We need to manage our resources, use the PLCs. And what struck me in the group that was enthusiastic downstairs is I was all fussed about the abstract issue of getting over being fearful and using concepts, but I would say 80+% of what you were doing was showing teachers techniques and methods and how to get together to do that. And that's the hard mechanics. And I'm sorry that I went on when I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think this is really, really important. And the more that we can understand this and do everything we can to support from outside, the better. So thank you and your colleagues and teachers and students very much.
Well, thank you. We are in our professional learning. We're really trying to incorporate the sharing of knowledge, the practice right then and there during the training, and the dialogue within their PLCs so that they really cement that knowledge and get an opportunity to practice it. So I'm excited that you saw that. And when we provided these books on August 24th, everybody was so excited about them that we ran out. So I ordered more than the number of staff we had. So I'm not sure if people took a home copy and a school copy, but it's a good problem that they're so enthusiastic and so excited.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And the next item on the agenda is policies first read, and I turn it over to Bill in the policy committee.
Okay, thank you. So we have a first read of policy 1400, and this is a rehash, a second look, an updated red line version of the policy was provided in the board packet. The changes reflect some recommendations from our last meeting, as well as the incorporation of some language from House Bill 1329 that provides guidance to the board in the event that a meeting is adjourned due to disruptions that would make continuation of the meeting unfeasible. So those were the updates that we made and brought it back to a first read because we had made those changes. Committee, any discussion? Or adds? Okay. Okay.
Well, that was good, and thank everybody who went into reworking that to get to this point. Action items. The first action item is the second read of several policies. And again, I'll let Bill and the policy committee introduce what they are.
Thank you. So we have a second read on policy 3122. We discussed this at the last meeting. It's a policy on unexcused and excused absences, and this particular policy change added a definition of mental health reason as an excused absence, which we talked about last time. When districts classify mental health absences as excused, it sends a message to students, parents, teachers, and administrators that mental health is accepted and matters. And it sends a message that people can talk about mental health inside schools without extra judgment or shame. Do you want to do these one by one? Or
Well, I was just telling Julie, normally these are in the consent agenda, so we've already reviewed them and I think discussed.
I think if we check questions,
Okay.
check item by item.
okay. So any questions on that first one? Okay. Great.
Bill,
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
Yes, I'm the one that did it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because as an act, sorry. I'm the one that's out of place. As an action item, I should ask for a motion and then we can discuss them. Correct?
Can I just say why we're now seeing it in this?
Yeah.
It used to be in consent agenda. And when one of our procedures changed on approval of action items, we discovered that we weren't really giving the public an opportunity to make a public comment on a policy approval. So by putting it as a separate action item, we're now allowing public comment at the beginning of the meeting if someone has reviewed the agenda and they want to comment on a policy before final approval. So it will now be always like this. So really, it just needs a motion and a vote.
Thank you, Kim, for getting us on the straight and narrow. This came out of a new legislation and a new procedure where we saw that we were not offering the opportunity in citizen comment to address second read policies before we enacted them. So it's a technical correction. And if there ever is a wish to discuss, then board members should intervene. But we can probably treat it, and that's where I'm remiss, as similar to a consent agenda, bring a motion, hopefully the second, and then if there is any wish to discuss. So let's go back. Thank you, Kim. Looking for a motion to second read approval of those action items.
Move to approve in the packet for a second read.
Second that motion?
Thank you, Maria. Does anybody wish to discuss any of these? Anything you've learned? That being the case, I'll ask everybody to please signify if they're approved by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And okay, I'll keep the mic and put it down. Let's just see. We are now on the selection of a superintendent search firms to be interviewed. In the cover, I said I would do an introduction, and I'll begin by saying that this superintendent search is unfamiliar territory and that continues to be a learning experience. And I think I have a lot of company in this. So I want to go over what we need to do and why, and then we can get into the specific recommendation. The search firm could be described as the discoverer of information for the board. The first and big phase that we have is called community engagement. The topic is to create a description of the expectations and wishes for the school district and what kind of superintendent is considered most likely to succeed. The board is interviewed in depth, and after that, the community, being students, families, employees, and other stakeholders, is sounded out using surveys and small group conversations. From this work, the search firm develops its consultant version for what's called the profile of desired criteria of the future superintendent. The board reviews this recommended profile, instructs what will be the actual board approved profile, which is not necessarily the same. And this is then given to the search firm to use for recruiting. Next comes recruitment, in which the search firm scours, and I'm going to say this intentionally, near, far, and in places that are often missed, looking for candidates and applicants using a variety of tools. At this time, it's also important in the value of the community engagement phase, the search firm applies the information from that to promote the Wenatchee School District as a desirable place to work. In the next phases, and this is separating the work that the search firm does from what the board does, it's important to note that the board retains decision authority. The search firm provides tools for the board to use, people to look at, and structured information about the people. The tools show how people fit the criteria, but the board uniquely controls the selection. In screening, the next stage, the search firm checks references and creates the structured information on the candidates, but all the candidates are presented before the board. For the final candidate interview, the search firm's role is to provide facilitation and technical help to the board, but it is the board's show, which is the hiring decision belongs to the board. In doing the hiring or making its hiring decision, the board listens to and respects input from community stakeholders, but the ultimate responsibility for hiring what will be their one and only employee is not delegated. What do I see in this description? Well, there are a lot of people playing in there and a lot of information to exchange. It's a highly demanding and intricate job. But much more important than it's demanding and intricate, it begs for teamwork. The probability of high success in achieving the best outcome for the district may well depend more on the way all the players work together and contribute than any other factor. That teamwork, I think, can be managed helpfully from the board downwards. Where are the critical places for the board's role in this process? The typical search program identifies 3 that most need deep board direction: getting the board's views for the profile, approving the actual superintendent profile criteria, and finally interviewing and selecting the person hired to be our superintendent. The timeline and scheduling of the steps in this multi-person search process will be a challenge. An art will be required to delegate with trust from the board to team players those steps that need to be expedited efficiently while retaining ultimate board authority. This reality will be a driver in the setup for many of the search process steps that we have to take. I wanted to say that to set the scene of what we're trying to do and how we go about it. At the next point, I want to talk, I'm going to take the 4 points written in the board package that the search firms were suitable and capable as read, but those comments are definitely open for individual board members to express their opinions. Before we go into the recommendation, I do want to use this meeting format, which I think will give us a whole playing field in front of all of us at the same time for healthy and freedom of discussion. Maria will present the committee recommendation. Once we have a motion on the table, each board member in turn will be given the floor to express their opinion and to register the questions that they want to ask and be answered. Discussion and responses to questions will take place after we've all presented. My own individual turn comes last. And I hope this will be a way for us to tackle actually hundreds of pages and move onwards into an effective and fruitful process. So Maria, can you take over?
Thank you, Martin. So hopefully everyone got a chance to review those 6 RFPs that were submitted to the district. Martin and I spent quite a few hours in several meetings, discussing each RFP in detail. And on behalf of the committee, we are recommending Northwest Leadership Associates and McPherson and Jacobson to be interviewed. We felt that all of these firms confirmed their ability, all of the firms confirmed the ability to perform the scope of the work, but we felt that these 2 firms performed better in the criteria. We are confident in both firms, yet between the 2, we feel that they each have different strengths and different characteristics that fit the needs of the district. One of the firms is dominant in our area, while the other has national experience. Both firms understand the uniqueness of our district and rate very well. The cost factor between the 2 firms is neutral, and the estimated cost allows for the district to be fiscally responsible as well. Those are the 2 recommendations on behalf of the committee.
Thank you, Maria. I'm just going to go left to right, or my left to right. You've had an opportunity to read the profiles. I've given you an introduction of how we're going to try and go about the task. Now is the opportunity for you to express how you felt about the different firms, and also for us to take note of any questions to discuss. Julie?
I really don't have any comments or questions. Is probably where I would have landed based on the criteria as well, and given my understanding of Northwest Leadership's involvement in other local efforts as well. My only, I guess, question or thought would be maybe interviewing 3 firms just to widen the pool, but I realize that may just add additional time and effort. So, and especially because a few of the proposals or the responses missed a few elements that we may have more questions about. So the ability to dive down a little bit deeper in an additional firm might be advantageous. But I think the committee landed probably where I would have landed based on the criteria.
Julie, Laura?
Oh, yeah, I guess I'm after Maria. So I appreciate the work of the committee. I did read all 6 of the application packets. They were very extensive, and honestly, I don't have super strong feelings about either one of those firms. There was one firm, and I was trying to look up which one it was, that came out very strongly in their approach for recruiting a multicultural candidate. And I was just trying to figure out which firm that was because I didn't have their name memorized. And I do recognize that the person who's the lead at that firm was one of the people who used to work for Hazard Young Atea and Associates. That was Human Capital Enterprises. So I was impressed with that approach for capital enterprises. And if we were to do a third, that would be who I'd be interested in, despite my reservations about the last time.
I also did go through each application. What I did appreciate, same as Julie, the Northwest Leadership, they provided that or found the superintendent for Eastmont, for Chelan School District, for a lot of local districts, more than I was shocked by seeing how many they've found for this area. So that kind of indicated to me, again, I was kind of in the same boat with you, looking at the previous, maybe not so much, but did look at the Human Capital Enterprises. If I were to vote for a third, that would be the third that I'd be interested in as well, because of hearing some good things about them and the break off that they had done, as you felt. But yes, thank you, committee, for the work, the hours that you put in. They were extensive and a lot of reading to do in those. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all. I'm going to turn some of that over to Maria, but first I think I can address it. Well, actually, I was supposed to say what I thought, and Maria pretty much said everything that I thought. But I think that what signaling ahead, the things you brought up, I'm going to turn over to Maria because we talked about some of them ourselves. But I did want to talk about the cost structure across the 6 proposals. In the previous search, the final bill, all the payments made to the search firm were 2.5 times the basic proposal. Now, that is not totally unexpected because it excludes travel expenses and things like that. And, if people add extra things, and I think we may find that we want to dive a little deeper into the community engagement phase than the typical one. That's something that I think we might want to look at as we set the terms later on. But the reason I bring up the cost is twofold. That 5 of the firms look very, very similar. The cost structure and the detail wasn't sufficient for you to form a reliable cost comparison, but they look pretty similar. But the lesson I draw from that is the importance of managing the process so that we work together, signal ahead, and try and do things like that. And that's part of why I gave that introduction. I think I wrote somewhere that it's in our hands to manage it well, and that's important cost-wise. It's even more important outcome-wise. So let me just scan my things for a moment. I felt it was important. Most of them expressed willingness to adapt to our special requests and needs. And I think that was important, but that might add a few extra costs. They all said that they would price match, or I think they all did. And to me, that's an indicator that we can probably use ideas across the board if they make sense. I think 3 of them offered videos of interviewees. The others may have them anyway, but not have offered them. That would be an example. And things like that I think are pretty important. The one I specifically wanted to address, and then I want to let Maria give an opinion and the rest of you discuss, is should we interview more than 2? My first reaction was to have a safety backup. I think I'll speak for myself here. I felt that there was a gap between the first 2 and the next one. Initially, Maria and I didn't have the same opinion, but I think after listening to her, I defer to her comment on who could be the 3rd. My feeling is, and I would like to be criticized as whether this is adequate protocol, would be to focus on the 2 that we think are out ahead and put our effort in that. Unless we find a surprise conflict of interest or a failure, we'll pick one of those. I don't actually want to do a categorical rejection of the other 4. In case that were to happen, we would need to communicate to them. If we found we had an issue, we could rapidly call a special board meeting and bring in an extra one. So that's just my thinking on that. I would then, since Maria has information on this, she could communicate what she thinks about a possible number 3 and what she thinks about having more than two firms being interviewed, and then the rest of you can pitch in on that too.
I don't have additional information. No, so that 3rd company was a pretty, I think it was up there. But again, the price was a factor in it, because the reality is that, you have the base price, but once you start adding services, it's apt to double in price. I think we saw that in the last superintendent search. So when we're looking at 34,000 and then working with our Latino community is an added $4,000, and background searches are another $3,000, it just kind of took it to a different level. So that was my hesitation. It's a fairly new company as well. It seems to have kind of broken off of HYA. Thank you. I do appreciate that it was tailored to the needs of our community. I also feel that the other two companies also can take that approach. I am open to interviewing a third, but with hesitation of, being fiscally responsible, given where we're at financially, and knowing that it's not going to be at the estimated $34,000.
So my thought is that's exactly what the interview process is maybe designed to do, is you, especially for a newer entity that's maybe breaking out into this environment, it's the opportunity to ask them the questions about their pricing, and if these companies want to be competitive with getting these contracts, it's a further opportunity to decide, are their numbers solid, or is just the proposal they've given us, and now when they sit down with us and hear more of our needs, can this be scaled, minimized, other aspects change so that it does fit the cost proposal? Because we see that all the time when we're sending out RFPs for legal work. It's, we'll send you our, meets all the criteria, but then when we sit down for the interview process and find out what the needs really are, or what your budgetary restrictions really are, we can same scope of services, but meeting that financial need. Just an option if we wanted to open it up to explore that, because it sounds like we kind of all thought that maybe there was a third that was capable just out of the price range. And then as far as, I think these all stay on the table, even through, it's not a lowest, it's not a public works bid where we have to reject any, and we're stuck with one bidder. We could do the interview process and you could decide you don't like any of them and want to interview the three that you didn't interview. So they all kind of stay, as long as we've opened this competitive solicitation process. I think the options are always there to go back and consider and move through until we've made a selection. And even after we make a selection and negotiate and decide, hey, we're not getting anywhere, let's call back. As long as we've competitively solicited it in the first set, I think we still have some flexibility to move through the process.
Does anybody know what we spent at the last superintendent search? Does anybody have that 50,000? That was.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm, forgive my ignorance, but I'm going to ask a question that, new school board member, I'll fall on that again. Is there ever a window? Where is the opportunity to just, before we hire or engage any of these companies, to say, anybody want the job? Is there ever a chance for people to put their name in the hat, opportunity to be superintendents without a company? Just the Wenatchee School District is looking for a superintendent. There's no way to do that. You can't ever say, is this a possibility?
You could do that. I don't think it would be, from my perspective, I don't think that would be a wise way to go. Just because of the services offered by the search firms, first in digging out qualified candidates around, the country. They are in the business, so they kind of know where their skill sets are and who to pull, and they might reach out to somebody that we wouldn't. But not only that, the thorough vetting process that they go through in, checking these people out is, and also you have an awkward place, like who in the district would do that? Our HR person is going to be doing that for their future boss. I mean, I feel more comfortable having a comprehensive, well thought out plan handling the process than trying to do it internally.
Plus, there's a guarantee. There's a guarantee if you go through a search firm.
I would agree with Laura's assessment, and I think it spreads out into almost statutory expectation that school boards will take the prudent course in doing this, as well as all the other attributes that it brings.
Yeah, I think our community would probably expect this as part of the due diligence in the search process.
Yeah.
And if we didn't, I think we're hopeful that local applicants will be ones to apply, and that's who we'll ultimately end up with. But I think the community would expect us, and we owe that accountability to them, to do a full process, even if it's painful and expensive.
Well, and I think the companies, I think they all did a good job at addressing internal candidates, how the approach they would take, whether you need more detail on it, that's something that could be adjusted in the contract.
Okay, we seem to be centered on the top two. I felt that the third one was not just cost questions. For example, the in-depth survey of Hispanic was an add-on of 4,900, not included. And I do think that they had more, probably had more work in their higher value. But in terms of a shorter track record, the fact that two firms both claimed the same prior searches, creates a certain uncertainty, whereas the two front runners gave us a good, different kind of approach. The dominant local firm, with the question being, how good are you going to be about finding people from outside our backyard, which is a good question that we should ask everybody, if it's two or three. And then having a national firm with a reasonable but somewhat limited footprint in our backyard. And so that was kind of where I landed. I'm just trying to, somebody can correct me, the best way to move forward, I think if someone were to take a motion to approve the recommendation made by Maria, and then we could discuss and amend it from two if that was decided. I do want to add that motion should be extended to appoint the interview committee who will do the next stage and then report back to the board as well. And I would name the people on the interview committee.
Move to approve the committee's recommendation to interview the two selected firms and to appoint an interview committee.
Second.
Thank you, Laura, for opening that up. At this point, do we have further discussion, or have we? I will, and then call for a vote on that motion.
I could go either way with two or three. I still do have this sort of curiosity about the third firm, just interested in, but I do completely understand the evaluation of the fiduciary responsibilities that we do have. We did spend $50,000 on the last search, and I'm fairly certain that that was not the dollar figure that was represented as the lump sum in the contract. My recollection is it was somewhere closer to 20. And there were a lot of add-ons. So I'm wondering, no matter who we interview, whether it's 2 or 3 or 10, that when we get to the point of the contract, if we discuss with them having a not to exceed amount, including travel and incidental expenses.
I think that's good. I was going to get into that. You might have seen on the board package that I said I'd go into the next steps of search process. And part of this doesn't relate to the issue of 2 or 3, but it relates to how we select, I think, and think about it. As I've gone through the painful learning process of looking not just at how much we need to read, but the intricate steps that you take next time around. I'll give you one example. Last time it was 2 weeks from when we selected the firm to when we had a contract ready to sign. So one of the things that I was going to suggest as an indicator moving forward is that we start thinking about appointing a negotiating committee. Last time, the president was appointed to be the negotiating agent working with our legal counsel. I kind of like the 2-person committee process. It gives the lead person or the chair a second voice and diversity of control. But I would like to be ready if we make a selection on October the 11th. Before that, have people aware that we want 2 people to work really fast and We can set up with our internal counsel to be ready with kind of a vanilla contract. So that's one aspect of, what we can do. And then getting back to the cost management, something that was brought up in possible questions is all of these proposals bring up follow-up questions, what's behind it. And we do need to be very even-handed in our questioning. But I think if we can structure questions really well for the interview stage, those follow-up questions can draw a lot of information for the negotiation stage. And I would also want at a staff level, last time the community engagement program was, I believe, run by the executive assistant and the communications director. So we can do a lot of work looking at the groups that we want, small groups, how many people, and so that we can put together the detailed answers we get in the next round with what we're thinking. And that should accelerate our ability both to have a contract and also to manage the costs after the fact without surprises. All of that, I'm kind of inverted the order a little bit, but it might help us in this discussion. I think I'm very much focused on trying to put our best foot forward and manage this well. And that's why I said it's kind of in our hands to do a good job. We can use a consultant well or not well. That doesn't address the question as to whether we wanted a backup. I think that if anybody feels that we want 3 rather than 2, perhaps an amendment could be proposed and we could decide by a vote or in further discussion whether we wanted to do that.
I think we have 2 really good firms recommended. I don't feel strongly enough about it to add the extra work because they're starting out at such a higher level that it would be work to, refine that and make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. It's more work for us. I'm good with 2.
I think in that case, I'll pause after this just in case somebody has any second thoughts or a wish to do that. But I am about to call for a vote in favor of the committee recommendation to interview McPherson and Jacobson and Northwest Leadership Associates for the superintendent search position. All those in favor, please say aye. That is a unanimous approval. Thank you very much. We will be doing that and we will move into that as effectively as we can. The one other item that I was going to do follow up, and let me just think. The question, all of us have read the full profiles and all of us probably have information we would like to get in a second round of interviews. I would encourage board members to send suggested questions to the executive assistant to Kim. She's the hub on this, and that way we can put together the most powerful package of questions for the next round. And that was really all I had for the follow-up. So getting back to the agenda, we now have the superintendent report. Bill, thank you.
Thank you. And that's a departure from the way that we normally do this agenda. We have put my report in before your discussion so that your discussion piece at the end could be a nice wrap up. So some quick facilities updates. I'm happy to report that Valley Academy students and staff are back in the building. Yay. And we were able to get the last HVAC compressor placed on the roof at Wenatchee High School last week. So excited about that. And as you know, we were able to host the Fiestas Mexicanas event at Triangle Park. And that event brought together many members of our community and was a great celebration. Our own Alfonso Lopez was a key part of Friday night's celebration. So that was fun to see him on the stage working at the celebration. And as you know, Martin and I were able to meet briefly with Senator Brad Hawkins to discuss some educational issues. And Senator Hawkins will be joining us for a special session with the board on November 22nd, which is fairly close to when he'll be heading into session. So looking forward to that. And Brad has been responsive to the issues we discussed and even reached out to other departments at the state level regarding some questions that we shared with him. So that was great to see his responsiveness to that discussion. Also want to share that we had our salmon festival last week, and though it was almost canceled due to smoke, our third grader students were able to participate. It was a great event where students learn more about the life cycle of the salmon and some of our local Native American heritage. In addition, we in October have our Science Resource Center expanding their STEM field experiences to the middle schools. Our 6th grade students will be going to the Columbia River Breaks Interpretive Center near Eniat in October to learn more about fire prevention. And our staff presentations that are coming up here in efforts to directly engage with employees, Diana and I will be attending staff meetings and operational department meetings over the next 2 months. We're going to share a short presentation to support the launch of the strategic plan and keep that on people's radar and moving forward. And we're also going to be answering questions about our budget situation and give staff an opportunity to ask us questions, share feedback, and I'm looking forward to those meetings. We've hosted one at Castle Rock building, and that went well. It was great to be there with the Castle Rock staff. 2 more quick items. Just a reminder to the board and our community members that on October 5th, we have our next Migrant Bilingual PAC meeting. That will be at 6 p.m. at the Wenatchee High School Commons, and Mr. Lopez has a great event planned there that will include some gang awareness information as well. And the last part of my report, I want to go back to the Salmon Festival and just share a personal experience I had at the Salmon Festival. I was able to go out to the festival, and I was a little bit behind. The festival was already going. At the time, I pulled into Rocky Reach, and you know, when you pull into Rocky Reach, the PUD greets you and lets you into the facility as part of their security. And I was going in, there was a truck ahead of me, and the security personnel said, "Hey, if you just follow this truck, they'll show you where to park for the event." So I followed the truck despite the fact that they pulled into an area where students were crisscrossing and there were, you know, booths set up. So I did what I was told. I followed the truck. And when the truck parked, I parked right beside it and noticed that we were the only 2 vehicles in that congested area. And I saw a park ranger type individual get out of the truck, and I thought, I'm not supposed to be here. So I went ahead, moved out of the truck, enjoyed the Salmon Festival, saw some great things, and was able to see the kids interacting with the presenters. It was just a great event. And then I realized as I was thinking about how I was going to get out of there, that I was kind of stuck in this precarious parking location. So I'm kind of heading back to where my truck was parked, and I'm thinking, I don't even know how I'm going to get out of here through all these kids and the booths and everything. And as I'm thinking that, I see this blue uniform walk by. It caught my attention, and I recognized this was a student from Wenatchee Valley Technical Skills Center. The criminal justice program from the Wenatchee Valley Tech Center was providing support for parking and other things at this event. And I had recently been to Wenatchee Valley Technical Skills Center and met some of these kiddos. So, you know, I quickly walked up to this young lady and said, young lady, do you remember me? And she said, "Yes, Mr. Eagle, what can I do for you?" And I said, you know, I've got this, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here. We can help. So she gets on the radio, and within minutes, I had 12 of these students in the blue uniforms and their teacher in a side-by-side to drive me down to the truck. There, you know, I had no trouble getting out of this very congested area. So a thank you to the students in that program at Wenatchee Valley Technical Skills Center. And that is my superintendent report for this evening.
That was great. Thanks, Bill. You were actually upstaging the board who was supposed to have the lighthearted, happy closing to the meeting. Anyway, this time we're going to go from right to left. Catherine, do you want to have a board communication?
Well, I want to say I thoroughly enjoyed the Friday night football game. Congratulations to the Panthers for winning, and the band and the color guard for their first performance. And they're heading towards their first competition down in Kennewick on Saturday. I think they have to get up at 3 a.m. to get there. So I look forward to that. I'll be there, but congratulations Panthers on their win. And that was exciting.
I also attended Fiestas Mexicanas. It was great to see Wenatchee School District staff Friday and Saturday at the booth, and the partnership that we had with the organization. There was 3 students that received scholarships. One of them at least being a current student. So that was really nice to see. I also attended the Cafe annual fundraiser dinner, where there was actually 7 students that were granted scholarships as well. Some of them being former students, Wenatchee High School students that participated in some of the strategic plan and the equity review. So that was really nice to see them, where they're at now and the support that they're getting from the community.
So just a reminder that General Assembly for me is this Friday, so I'll be putting in our positions, although I believe I technically have until October 4th to get them in if we really are delinquent. I've received recommendations from 1 person so far, so get them to me before Friday, please, and I'll send out the final list once I've looked at what everyone submitted, and if it's just me and Martin, then fine. And then as to the air conditioning situation at the high school, I can attest that it's working because my daughter complains about how cold she is every day in class. And I am now frequently visiting multiple schools in this district on a daily basis. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Julie. At the same time as the scholarship event was on, the CORPAC, the officers of the Bilingual Migrant Parent Association, held their officer meeting with Alfonso Lopez. And I think we should put every effort into that organization. As I say, on October the 5th, there'll be the one for the general community. But I think we have a need and an effort to encourage parental and family participation, and I urge everybody to support that effort. I've also got my own little, on behalf of the board, I want to welcome all the new principals and programs, not all of them, just the most highlighted ones. So I did visit the Air Force ROTC program, and actually Bill was there as well. So we welcomed them, very impressive. This is a building year for them, and they're bringing in their gear and setting up their program, which is exactly the way it was planned. I'm going to go back a little bit. We were never supposed to get that program that quickly. I happen to be the board member sitting in on the edge of the presentation, but the Wenatchee School District staff who presented that did such a superb job that we went from being told, well, I don't know how long this is going to take. We only find spaces when we remove people from the program, to an exchange of eyes at the end. And if you guys can hire somebody, you can start next fall. And the unsaid part is because you were so impressive in how you prepared. So there are times I think that the district deserves credit. That's a really good program within the CTE. What's happening in CTE going down into the middle schools and encouraging students and their families to think not just my last pathway to graduation in the last desperate 18 months, but to think through career opportunities in education over the longer period. This is actually pretty transformational. So that was my one visit, and I was very glad to visit Sunny Slope and had a very impressive visit. And actually tomorrow I rush to Pioneer and Lewis and Clark. And then I'm going to be playing hooky for 2 weeks, and Maria will be chairing the board meeting on the 11th of October. So thank you, Maria. And unless somebody else has got any other good news, No, thank you all very, very much for a very effective meeting. Thank you.